We have some established MRV ranges. Myself, Dr. Mike, Dr. James, in creating scientific principles of strength training, outlined some MRV ranges there. We've tweaked them since then, with just experience and observation and tracking what the athletes I do, what benefits them the most. So during hypertrophy, our overloading sets per week, so sets that fall within a stimulating enough range to drive hypertrophic adaptations, which generally is about 60 to 75% intensity for sets of 6 to 12 reps. Squat, bench, and deadlift all generate different amounts of fatigue, with deadlift being the most fatiguing and bench being the least. So I tend to find that people in the squat their MRV tends to fall in the 10 to 16 sets per week range. The bench maybe from 14 up to 20, the deadlift from 6 to 12 sets per week. You can see the different ranges there for strength at the different lifts and peaking. So this first number is just as overall for the phase, and then this is a breakdown by the specific numbers, or by the specific lifts. All right, so we have this chart that's going to help us visualize and better understand how these different categories affect our MRV. So over on the left, we have the low volume factors, which the magnitude is going to go all the way down to taking 5 sets away from our MRV over here at -5. Here on the right, are going to be more of the factors that are going to cause a increase in MRV, and our scale is going to go all the way up to 5, to adding 5 sets per week. So we're going to use 2 athletes as examples here. 2 athletes that I coach, Marissa Inda, Brandon Allen, about as far away on these 2 categories as possible. But this should also help illustrate that the training isn't necessarily going to change by type, rather just by magnitude. So we're going to go through and circle all Marissa's in red and Brandon's in blue. All right, so pretty straightforward on the first one. Brandon, male, that's not going to affect, it's not going to raise or lower his MRV. With Marissa, female, is going to make a big increase in her MRV up to adding 5 sets per week. So, and remember, we're starting at those midpoint numbers. So for the squat, we're starting at 13 sets, and now we're going to adjust from there. Next, their body weight, opposite sides of the spectrum here. Brandon is a super heavyweight lifter, weighing about 335, 340 pounds. So we're going to take 4 sets away per week from his MRV based on that. Marissa, a lightweight lifter. She competes in the 52 kilo class, walks around right there, 52, 53 kilos. Lighter lifters can generally handle more training, so we're going to add 4 sets per week to Marissa's MRV. Height is going to be very significant based on how far the bar moves. Brandon is about 6'1", so a tall lifter, so we're going to take another set away, -1. Marissa, very short, 5 feet tall, maybe even a little bit less, but she doesn't like to admit it. So we're going to add 2 sets to her MRV, a +2 there. Hopefully you can see as the number, we're just pulling it down from up above there. Both lifters extremely accomplished, very high strength levels. They would both be pretty far above even the international elite classification on those USPA charts that we're using. And because they're very strong, they're lifting heavy weights close to the limit of their career potential, and very neurally fatiguing, as well as fatiguing to the connective tissue, muscles, skeletal system. We're going to take 3 sets per week away from their MRV. Again, both lifters are very advanced. Marissa will turn 42 a couple weeks after making this video, and she has been training consistently 4+ days per week, every week since she was 17 years old. Brandon grew up playing football, high school football, college football, has been lifting since he was about 13, 14 years old, and he's getting ready to turn 30 later this year. So they would both fall into the very advanced range in regards to experience, and we're going to take 2 sets away from their MRV. Even though they've built up tremendous special work capacity because of it, since they're so close to their career peaks, the training they're doing is very taxing, very fatiguing, as well as maybe accumulation of stress and small injuries along the way. Age is the next factor for us to consider. The older you are, the more difficult it is generally to recover. So Marissa, who turns 42 later this year, we're going to take 2 sets away on her MRV because of that. Brandon, 29, will turn 30 later this year, but for right now we'll put him in the 20s, and we're going to add 1 set to his MRV because of that. Now, I know that there's a big difference between 20 and 29, so you can factor that in appropriately as someone, might be right on the cusp. These next factors: diet, sleep, and stress away from training. Brandon has improved his diet a ton, and lost about 60-70 pounds at one point from his peak, and does a generally good job with his diet, but I don't think that he's tracking it that specifically and timing all the year throughout. So we'll just say average diet for him. Marissa has a very small appetite, so she eats what she wants. She doesn't track all the time, so she's getting the calorie. They're both getting the calories that they need, but maybe not nailing the precision that we'd be looking for in the good diet. So we'll say that they have an average diet. You can see that a poor diet all the way over at -3 has poor diet's going to take much more away from your training than a good diet at +1 is going to give to it. So average and good, yes, there is improvements to be made there, and extra gains to be had, but it's not a massive difference. But if you have a poor diet, you're really inhibiting your ability to recover from hard training. Sleep is going to be very similar to the diet, where poor sleep, less than 5 hours a night, is going to have a huge impact taking away your ability to recover, where sleeping great is going to help, definitely, but it's not this huge benefit beyond the average sleep. So I put both of them into the average category, sleeping 5 to 7 hours a night consistently. Stress away from training. Brandon owns his gym, Filthy Power, in Las Vegas. Marissa does personal training, online coaching. Neither of them are manual labor jobs, though being self-employed, has its own stress that comes along with it. But we'll say that both of them have a low stress away from training, so they're going to get a +1 on their MRV for that. All right, next category: performance-enhancing drug use. Marissa, competing in the USAPL IPF, undergoes out-of-competition drug testing, all that stuff. We've talked about that in plenty of podcasts. Drug-free lifter, get in the know. Brandon Allen, if you follow him on Instagram or have ever heard him talk anywhere ever, I'm not telling you any secrets here. We'll give him the big yes over there. How that affects recovery. The magnitude of this is something that we took a lot of consideration into. So saying no isn't taking away from the MRV. Well, the yes is adding 3 sets, and there's probably some people who think it should be +5 sets or +10 sets. But the reality of it is it does some things that do allow you to train more volume. Like it does help repair muscle tissue and improve the nitrogen uptake and all that stuff. But it also means that you have more muscle, which more muscle is going to mean that you're heavier, and that's going to take away your ability to recover. It's going to mean that you're lifting heavier weights, and heavier weights are harder to recover from. It's not going to improve the recovery of the connective tissue the same way that it does of the muscles, or of bone structures the same way that it does the muscles. So it's not really improving the capacity there. So while it may even diminish those abilities to recover or lower those MRVs because the weights you're using are heavier. So yes, it does help, but it is not just this, it doesn't just mean that you get to do as much training as you can possibly imagine and continually recover from it. So we're going to add 3 sets to Brandon's MRV, and Marissa's will be unaffected there. Finally, the last category: historical recovery ability. How well have these athletes recovered from previous training? Marissa comes from a long bodybuilding physique training background, very, very high volumes, gymnastics career before that. And even though she is in her early 40s, I'm going to rate her as an exceptional recovery ability. Brandon, I've been coaching Brandon for about 3 years now. And judging on those 3 years and that he did lower volume training and just kind of maxed out a lot previous to that, doesn't have tremendous special work capacity, so we're just going to rate him as average. I wouldn't say it's poor or below average by any means. He's got great genetics, he is an exceptional lifter, so we'll just rate him at average. So we're going to add 2 sets to Marissa's MRV because of that. So taking into account all of those factors that we just talked about, and that again, you can print out that page from from the link below and circle those for yourself if you prefer to do it that way. But we have all these different factors, and again, we started at 13 sets per week in the squat, 17 on the bench, and 9 sets per week in the deadlift, and we're just talking hypertrophy for the purposes of this video. So we go through all these different factors, and these are the MRVs that we are left with for Marissa Inda and Brandon Allen. You can see this big difference.